Here comes Mr. Farage now. Let's hear from... No, he's gone past the microphone.
He's got a sense of humour, isn't he?
Here we go. Nigel Farage.
Good afternoon, everybody. Whilst the Conservative Party have been busy today, very, very busy with Andy Street and others, attempting to move to the centre ground, to become more liberal than the Liberal Democrats, we've been busy on a different mission. And our mission is to unite the centre-right of British politics. And you've been watching that process being unveiled before your eyes over the course of the last few weeks. And today is another very significant step in that direction. Worth reminding people that Robert Jenrick on Con Home was by far the most popular frontbencher in the elected Conservative Party. Well, Suella Braverman is by far the most popular backbencher amongst the Con Home audience, all of which I believe is evidence that the centre-right is finally uniting, as the Conservatives, I'm quite certain, will go in the opposite direction. Their reaction to Suella's defection has been pretty abusive. Don't please ask any questions about that. We will not lower ourselves to their level. I know the other big story of the day, of course, is that Annie Burnham has been denied the opportunity to run in the Manchester by-election, which again I think sends quite a big message that on the day the Prime Minister has rejected putting talent onto his front bench, we in Reform are more than willing to accept talent. And I believe that's what we have done today. Suella Braverman has been very principled and very clear in what she believes in over many, many years. She was the first senior elected Conservative to say that the ECHR was incompatible with British law and putting the rights of British people first. And I believe she's going to be a terrific addition to our rapidly growing team. So without further ado, I'll welcome Suella Braverman to the stage. They're a bit less noisy than earlier.
They are. Thank you, Nigel. Very, very kind of you. Very good to see all of you this afternoon. As I said this morning, this feels like coming home. And I am incredibly grateful for the welcome, the support, and the fact that I am finally part of a mission that I can believe in. Because the truth is, for the first time in years, I now feel that I can truly believe in something. And the truth is, as I said to our veterans on earlier this morning, our country is broken, and only Reform UK can fix it. That is why I've left the Conservatives and I have joined Reform today. Now, I've not taken this decision lightly. I very much understand why there will be some people, particularly in Fareham Waterlooville Conservatives, who have supported me over the years, who will be feeling disappointed and upset. And I want to say to them that this is not about you. To those local supporters who have confided in me about their frustrations with the Conservative Party, but who have only stayed put because of me, please join me. Come and join Reform UK. If you believe in saving Britain, strong borders, a strong economy and a strong defence. And to those who still believe that we should remain loyal to a party that has betrayed them and the country countless times, please listen to why I say that enough is enough. It's time to put country first. Because we are in the fight of our lives to save Britain. And only Reform UK can do it. Our country is in deep peril. Families are struggling to keep bills under control. Businesses are being crippled. Immigration is off the scale. Taxes are at an all-time high. And yet services are at an all-time low. People don't feel safe anymore in their cities and towns. Our borders are broken. And our country stands humiliated and weakened around the world. People are crying out for real change, or they're leaving the country. So we have a choice. more of the same failed consensus, or radical brave leadership? And I choose the latter. And the only party that offers us that, with the solutions for the country and, most importantly, credibility, is Reform UK. I've had enough of Conservative betrayal. I've had enough of Conservative denial. I've had enough of the political chameleons who populate the Conservative Party. Enough of Conservative delusion. They are a party now that is too weak to save themselves, let alone the country. Now, I understand that being in a political party requires compromise and pragmatism. It also requires loyalty. But loyalty is a two-way street. If the party you joined no longer reflects the values and principles that it once did, you should question your allegiance. If the party keeps breaking its promises, you should question your loyalty. And now, too many promises lie in tatters. Too much damage has been done. And I no longer trust the Conservative Party. Let's look at the list of broken promises. The party promised time and again to cut immigration. It failed. But that failure was not just incompetence, it was deliberate. As Home Secretary, I tried so many times to cut the number of visas, only to be ignored by the Prime Minister, blocked by the Chancellor, and attacked by other Conservative cabinet colleagues. As a result, the numbers soared and only started to come down after I managed to secure the first set of changes in May 2023. Too little, too late. Despite that great betrayal, I remained loyal. The party promised to do whatever it takes to stop the boats. As Home Secretary, I tried so many times. Lee and Andrew, you will know the frustration that we had in the Conservative Party. I tried so many times to persuade the Prime Minister that we needed to leave the ECHR. I was the first Conservative minister to call for us to leave the ECHR because I saw how it undermined our national sovereignty and our border security. What happened? Conservative colleagues attacked me and the Prime Minister blocked me. Only one other currently sitting Tory MP and myself rebelled on the Rwanda bill because of the ECHR. As a result, the boats kept coming. Now, yes, the Conservative Party has adopted my policy 3 years later. But even now, look closely. It's half-hearted, cautious. Half of the Conservative MPs are dead against it. And even the leader herself didn't support the policy until a few months ago. When it really mattered, when we had the majority, when we had the chance to do something about it, she sided with the Remainers and she opposed me. She had to wait for Lord Wolfson to give her permission to change her mind before she caved and copied reform. That's not leadership. That's fear, insecurity and weakness. And yet, despite another great betrayal, I remained loyal. The party promised to tackle Islamist extremism. But as Home Secretary, I told the Prime Minister that we needed to ban the hate marches, that the Met Commissioner was failing the Jewish community, and that two-tier policing was damaging public confidence. I warned him that someone was going to be killed. I was blocked and ignored, and then I was sacked for telling the truth. What happened 2 years later? Members of the Jewish community murdered on the streets of Britain. The Conservative Party should be disgusted with itself, frankly. They were murdered because of out-of-control anti-Semitism and complacent policing. At the time, not one of my Conservative ministerial colleagues backed me up when it mattered. Now they all rush to pontificate about two-tier policing and out-of-control extremism. Another great betrayal, and yet I stayed loyal. The party promised to tackle grooming gangs, but as Home Secretary, when I spoke out about the problem, saying that multiculturalism had failed, I was vilified and called Islamophobic by my own Conservative Party colleagues. Another great betrayal, and yet I stayed loyal. The party promised to stop trans in schools, something that I know Sarah has been campaigning vociferously on. But as Home Secretary, when I said that we needed to scrap the Equality Act and ban absolutely social transitioning in schools, Conservative colleagues blocked me and criticised me. The result? We still have young people socially transitioning in schools. Another great betrayal. You get the picture. The question really is, why did I stay around for so long? Because at every junction, when it really mattered, when the party had to do the right thing, when it had the power, those in charge chose to do the wrong thing. They chose the weak option. And many of those same people lead the party today. And yet I still stayed loyal. And when I diagnosed all of these problems after the last general election, the leader herself said I was having a nervous breakdown, something she seems to have repeated again today. As Nigel said, those attacks say more about them than they do about me. So for some years now, I think you can see that I have been out of step with the Conservative Party. And in truth, I have felt politically homeless for the best part of 2 years. I've been ashamed of the Conservative Party. It is why I spent the 2024 general election campaign apologising to local voters for my party's record and asking them to vote for me in spite of my party allegiance, not because of it. It's why I was the first Conservative MP re-elected that night to apologise directly to the nation for my party's failings. It is impossible to defend the party's record in office or to even believe in its policy for the future. The people, the instincts and the factions are all the same. But now is also the time to acknowledge a deeper truth about what is happening in the Conservative Party, much more important than any personal attacks or friction. Conflict and debate is normal in politics, and the battle between right and left has been there for decades within the Conservative Party. The Wets and the Thatcherites, the Remainers and the Leavers, the ERG, which I used to chair, or the One Nation. That is politics. No party is perfect. And the party I joined in the 1990s was about low taxes, Euroscepticism, law and order, tradition and patriotism. But less than a year after becoming a Tory MP in 2015, I found myself rebelling against David Cameron to support Brexit. Incidentally, almost exactly a decade ago, I sat down with the Prime Minister and I had to tell him, I'm afraid I can't support your Brexit deal. I had to put country above party. I thought my rebellion then would be a one-off. But it wasn't. To my horror, Theresa May then messed up Brexit. I had to resign from ministerial office. I rebelled not just once, but 3 times. With Andrew, a fellow Spartan, over her Brexit betrayal deal. There were 28 of us who held out. 28 of us believed in our nation's sovereignty, that it was obvious what we needed to do, put country before party. Later, I thought the Eurosceptic right of the party had won, after Boris became Prime Minister and Brexit was delivered in 2020. But you know what? I was wrong. Brexit was actually a facade for what turned out to be a largely Lib Dem, socialist-light agenda. Because after 2020, what did we see? Out-of-control immigration, Northern Ireland siphoned off, EU rules still applying in the UK, the highest tax burden in 70 years, a bigger welfare state, weak borders, and woke ideology taking over our institutions. Where had the Brexit that we had all fought for, including this man, where had it gone? So what followed Brexit was my rather lonely attempts to cut immigration, leave the ECHR, tackle Islamism, and boot out failing police chiefs. On none of those questions was the party with me, and I stood alone. So, the time has come to admit defeat. I'm on the right, proudly on the right of British politics, but the right has lost the battle for the Conservative Party. I tried with all my might. I took a few for the team. But the One Nation Wets have won the Conservative Party. The centrists control it, they populate it, and they are welcome to it. The truth is that in recent years, I have found myself effectively in a social democrat, left-leaning party made up of Conservatives in name only, Chino. No wonder I have felt politically homeless for years. So I've come to the irresistible conclusion that the Conservative Party is not a Conservative Party. It is very good at performative conservatism, but we all know the truth. When the cameras are off, when the doors are shut, when they're all sat round the table making the big decisions for the nation, the Conservatives will cave. I've tried to balance the need for compromise with my own political views, but this is now impossible. The betrayal is too frequent, and my loyalty has been abused. So it is time. I've been patient. I have waited to see if the party would change, but the truth is clear. It has not and it will not. The Conservative Party has gone. The Conservative Party has left the building. That is why today I am announcing, and I have announced, that I've resigned the Conservative whip and my membership, one that's endured 30 years, a party in which I grew up, in which I supported my mother as a local councillor for 16 years, when she stood as a Conservative MP herself, and on which I've been an MP for a decade. Now, I don't leave the Conservative Party with malice or anger or bitterness. That passed a long time ago. But with an element of sadness, when I look at what a once great party has descended into. So I have mixed feelings today. I am sad about leaving a political family, especially those members, friends and supporters in Fareham and Waterlooville, people with whom I've worked for a decade for the local community. They are all unsung heroes, and I understand that many of them, some of them, will be feeling hurt by my decision, and I regret that my decision may have hurt them, and I apologise for that. But I very much hope that many of them will join me at Reform UK. And I'm also incredibly excited and honoured and feel very lucky to be joining Reform UK today. You see, there is another way. We can rescue our country and turn it around. We just need a leader in whom we can believe. Someone who hasn't twisted and turned with the wind. Someone who hasn't jumped on the next passing trend just to get votes. The thing with Nigel is that he just keeps going. They try and shut him down. They try to demonise him. They throw all sorts at him. They all try and vilify him. But he doesn't get blown off course. You don't seem to be blowing him off course. You here in the room, the journalists, the media, the mainstream establishment. He actually gets stronger. That is remarkable. It's actually unique in British politics, which is packed with craven, superficial careerists, particularly the Conservative Party. He's not in politics for titles or for promotions. He is in politics to actually do something, to actually mean something, to actually save the country that he loves. He has this unique power to articulate our fears, our anger, our frustration, but also the direction of where we can head to. He's speaking for so many millions of people right now, millions of people who are smeared as racist just for wanting their country back, millions of people vilified as bigots just for wanting to stop the boats, millions of people who are being judged by the establishment just because they want more safety, more fairness and more security in the country they thought they could call home. And that steadfast, determined courage is exactly what Britain needs more of. And that's why I'm very proud to support Nigel. And he's the only man that I trust to lead this party as Prime Minister. And I'm going to do everything in my power to get him there. You won't find tweets by me criticising Nigel Farage. You won't find any speeches by me on the internet having a go at him, because I have largely agreed with Nigel for years. And in fact, there are times over the past few years where I have done and said things as Home Secretary or Attorney General. My Conservative colleagues have criticised me, and Nigel Farage has been the only mainstream politician to come out and support me. He speaks for me, and I know that he speaks for thousands of people in Fareham and Waterlooville and millions of people around the country. He has built a formidable operation. This is more than a political party. It is a movement. It is a mission that is serious, deadly serious about saving Britain. He has assembled a fantastic team of brilliant minds, accomplished individuals, all of whom are making an invaluable contribution right now. And I am proud and excited to join him today. Thank you.
Well, Suella, thank you. I think that message was pretty clear and unambiguous, and I thank you for it. Brilliant. Right. Unlike the other parties, we take questions from the press. No, really, we do, honestly. We're going to start with Chris from the BBC.
Thank you both. Chris Mason, BBC News, and with apologies with the 6 o'clock news being imminent. Once I've heard your answers, I'll have to make an early departure. Nigel Farage, you're amassing quite the collection of folk who were very close to Liz Truss, including serving in her cabinet. Is that a helpful association? And if I may, would you commit to putting your latest recruit sitting next to you into your government were you to win the general election? And Suella Braverman, in their response to your defection, your former party said the Conservatives did all we could to look after Suella's mental health, but she was clearly very unhappy. What do you make of that? Thank you both.
Thank you. Chris, I'm very pleased to say that Robert Jenrick resigned as a minister, that Suella did her best to fight from within, but failed. Whichever cabinet they were in, and it's difficult to keep up, really, isn't it, because they change leaders so often, isn't relevant. What's relevant is we need experience of people on the front line. That has been the one commodity that we've been short of. We need people who've been there, who can share with us how government works, or perhaps, more accurately, how government doesn't work. We also will only accept people who are prepared to put their hands up and admit that despite their best efforts, they've failed. And I think you've heard that pretty clearly today. I've also set a deadline of May the 7th, after which we will not be accepting defectors. We'll then be looking for people to come into politics from outside of it, people with expertise in business, railways, energy, whatever it may be, because my view, and it's an outside view, but my view is you wouldn't run a company putting somebody in charge of a major department over which they had no knowledge at all and then reshuffle them 12 months later. So, do you want to answer what they've been saying about you, or should we move on?
Well, it is a bit pathetic. As I said, it says more about them than it does me. I'm not really going to dignify it. It's, I'm afraid, just more sorry signs of a bitter and desperate party that's in freefall.
Yeah, and I thought the comments yesterday of Priti Patel were fairly extraordinary as well. Very extreme in every way. And I think these are the last thrashings of a dying political animal, is my view. Chris from GB News.
Chris Hope, GB News. Nigel Farage, we were last here in this room with you 10 days ago. You said then, get ready for a Labour defector. That was last Tuesday. That never happened. Are these Labour defectors scared off by you hiring right-wing politicians like Suella Braverman? And to Suella Braverman, did you jump before you were pushed? Is that what drove you to make this choice today? And how can Nigel Farage succeed where all those other top politicians have failed to do what you want?
Well, Suella wasn't going to be pushed. I mean, the reason she joined and the reason you didn't know about it is because basically there were only two people that understood. And actually, I think your husband was involved too. But you know, we didn't tell anybody. You know what it's like in politics? You tell someone something in confidence, they will always share it with at least one other person. And that person thinks, well, no, I've been told, perhaps I'll tell somebody else. And that's why so few things in politics ever stay secret. It's why cabinets leak like sieves, all meetings leak. And generally, over the years, when I've done manoeuvres like this, we've managed to keep them under the radar. There are one or two in the party who criticise me by saying, why didn't you tell me first? Well, because I like surprises. I like to produce jack-in-the-boxes, and I think today was one of them. I mean, did you expect this defection?
Yes.
Did you? Oh, really? Well, I tell you what, Well, I tell you what, when the next one comes, on this or any other event, let me know, because I'll get down Ladbrokes with you, and we'll all make a very great deal of money. Didn't happen yet. Didn't happen yet. It will. We are talking to a number of people who've held senior positions in the Labour Party, and yes, they will come. But, you know, as I said with the Robert Jenrick move, you know, I was 65-35 confident he'd come in a few weeks' time, but you never quite know until it's done. But Kemi did us a big favour on that one. OK, let's go to Amanda from Sky News.
Right.
Sorry.
OK. Yeah. Listen, you're asking about when. I've never been divorced, but I have observed a lot of divorces, and this feels a bit like a divorce. I've been in a relationship. There's been a lot of and frequent betrayal on the part of one party, and yet I've stayed loyal. I've tried to make it work. We didn't go for counselling, but I've tried to give it a good go. Sometimes there have been some good weekends and some good times, and then sometimes it's all fallen back. And gradually, there's an erosion of trust and a breakdown of affiliation, love, even if you call it that. But, and eventually, there's a final straw. There's a moment when you think, right, this is it. And I think for me, that final straw has actually come in the last few days, because the Tory party has exposed itself to be incredibly toxic and a circus and a very unhealthy place. The text messages were released by the, I think Robert Jenrick released them, but they were text messages by the Chief Whip, so I saw what she really thought about me, which is she wanted me out. There now seems to be a concerted effort, you could call it a witch hunt, within the Conservative Party to hound out right-wingers. And, you know, there's been some unprovoked, unjustified, hostile briefing directed towards me from the leader's office. There comes a point when you say, this is not the partnership for me, and I deserve better.
Excellent lot. Amanda from Sky News.
Thank you. Amanda Acas from Sky News. First, a question to Nigel Farage. You now have 23 current or former Tory MPs who've defected. You said you don't want to be the Tory party 2.0. So how many is too many? And is there anyone in the Tory party that you wouldn't be prepared to accept?
Yes. Yes. And there are people who've approached us that we've said we don't think it's appropriate. Because, number one, they're not prepared to be contrite enough about what happened, especially in that last government since 2019. And secondly, because I took the view that they were viewing us as a lifeboat, that we were better for them than they would be for us. And my qualifications for this are very, very simple. They have to be contrite about what they did in government. They have to be prepared to put their shoulder to the wheel and actually help us and be an asset to us. And they have to come before the 7th of May. And after the 7th of May, none of you will ask any questions about defections or whether we're becoming like the Tory party, because that moment will have passed.
If I may, Suella Braverman, why now? The big betrayals that you listed earlier all happened under the previous Tory government. Why has it taken you so long to make this decision? The party has now adopted your policy on ECHR. What was it that finally tipped you over the edge? Was it this defection deadline day in May?
Well, as I just said, I mean, I've been thinking about it for some time. I've been politically homeless for the best part of 2 years. I have not had confidence in the Conservative Party, really, but I have tried to see whether it might change, tried to give it some time, and it's events over the last few days, really, which have tipped me over the line. The fact that it is a very toxic environment. There is now a concerted effort to expunge from the party anyone who wants robust borders, who wants a tough approach to law and order, anyone on the right of British politics. There is a witch hunt. And they are, demanding pledges of allegiance to the supreme leader, it seems, within the party at the moment. Unless you're willing to pledge and vow lifelong allegiance, you're out. That's not the way to run a party. That is insecure, weak and scared. It is not an environment where right-wingers have a home.
Yeah, and they're panicking, of course. They're panicking. Who next? That's the conversation. Who next? And I know who next. But we'll leave that for another day, shall we? Let's go to Shabab from ITV News.
Shihab Khan, ITV News. Mr Farage, we speak to voters up and down the country who often say to us that they view you and Reform UK as an alternative different to the mainstream political parties. How do you continue to make the argument that you are a different party and an alternative while you continue to accept Tory defectors? And question to you, please, Suella Braverman. Your critics argue that you attempted to become leader twice of the Conservative Party. You sat round the cabinet table, and part of the reason you have decided to join Reform UK is because you've seen that your career in the Conservative Party has come to an end. How much of this was about your own personal ambitions?
This is about, as a politician, what is essential is that you believe in the cause that you are fighting for. It is hard work being a politician. There's long hours, it's physically demanding. You have to really believe what you're doing. And I have not believed in the Conservative Party for some time. That is why I just said, at the general election campaign, I basically spent it apologising to people. That's not how you campaign. That's not how you try and persuade people to your cause. And so I have had a lot of problems with the Conservative Party for some time. Have things changed since the new leader has come? Not really. All the same people as before are largely running the party. And on some key instances, there's been a failure to step up. So, for example, the leader says, well, the local elections must go ahead because we believe in democracy. But then when Tory-run local councils delay their elections, she doesn't do anything. She doesn't step in. She doesn't rebuke them. She doesn't criticise them. She lets it happen. Actions speaking louder than words. There were a group of Tory MPs a few months ago who signed a letter to the Prime Minister saying that he should recognise Palestine even before the hostages have been released. Not Conservative Party policy, a slap in the face to the victims of October the 7th, and not how the Conservative Party should be treating its friend, our ally Israel. Did the Conservative Party leader do anything? No, she ignored it, didn't say anything. There were Tory Party MPs who had campaigned for the return of El Fattah to the United Kingdom. Robert Jenrick exposed this scandal and campaigned rightly that he shouldn't be coming to the United Kingdom. Did the Tory leader say anything about those Tory MPs who campaigned for this extremist to be back in our country? No. So, there's a lot of performative conservatism, as I said, but when push comes to shove, they flee the scene.
In some ways, your question's quite hard to answer because I can't win. And if we're a group of people that have never been in politics before, never held office before, you'll say to me, well, you're a bunch of nobodies with no idea what you're doing. And then if we recruit some people who've got genuine experience at cabinet level and of being on the front line, you say, well, you look like all the others. I would say this to you. We are distinct and different in every single way. We are radical. And I'll tell you what the key difference is. And it's this. The Prime Minister insists that Britain is not broken. The Leader of the Opposition insists that Britain is not broken. We absolutely insist that Britain is broken. And I don't think, until you're prepared to accept the depths to which we've sunk and are sinking fast, economically, socially, societally, unless you understand and accept those things, then it's impossible to get into the mindset to be radical enough to change them. And it's like the others want to sort of fiddle with the plumbing. We think you need a completely brand new boiler and a brand new system. And so people, people here, like Suella, who've in a way been arguing Britain is broken for a very, very long time. And what she's lost isn't her career within the Conservative Party. What she's lost is her battle to get the Conservative Party in the place that she thought it ought to be. And in the end, she's given up with that battle and come to join us. And frankly, we've agreed publicly on most things for 10 years, 11 years. So I think she'll fit in very, very well. And as I say, after May the 7th, you won't be asking that question because we won't be having anybody in after May the 7th. May the 7th is the day that redefines British politics. Despite the fact they've cancelled 29, or could it be with Essex 30 sets of elections, both parties to save their own skins. Despite those cancellations, May the 1st is going to reconfigure British politics. I doubt the Prime Minister will survive very long beyond it, with or without Andy Burnham in Parliament. And I believe that on May the 8th we'll wake up and the Conservative Party will have ceased to be a national political party. And from there on, we'll be charting our own course, but doing so with people in our team who know what it's like to live and work on the front lines of government. Moving on to Francis from Channel 4 News.
Thank you. Francis Reid, Channel 4 News. Mr Farage, you heavily criticised Suella Braverman over immigration when she was Home Secretary. I'm wondering what's changed exactly and why her performance would be any different under you. Suella Braverman, Mr Farage was scathing about you when you were Home Secretary, and he said this morning he's taken you in because you admit you got things wrong. Do you accept that version of events? And what, in your opinion, did go so horribly wrong? Does that include the Rwanda bill, perhaps?
Short of wearing sackcloth and ashes, it's quite difficult to see, frankly, what Suella could have done today to have apologised any more for the actions of the last government. So I'm not buying that at all. And if you took every public pronouncement I'd made against Suella over the years, the fact that you find one comment where expressing my frustration at stopping the boats, right? But I said publicly, I would, had I been a Conservative MP, I mean, they'd never have me, obviously, but had I been a Conservative MP, I would have voted for his leader. You'll find a string of complimentary comments, I promise you.
There's a video on YouTube called The Truth About Suella Braverman that Nigel put out a few years ago. It's after I think I was talking about the invasion on our southern border.
Yeah.
And when I said that as Home Secretary, countless Tory MPs had heart palpitations and they all started to wobble and they started criticising me and saying it was divisive and it was wrong and it was extremist and racist. Nigel Farage put out a little video called The Truth About Suella Braverman where he said, thank you. I called it an invasion many years before. It's finally very heartening to see a Conservative Home Secretary echo my words. He was the only mainstream British politician to back me up at the time. My own party colleagues couldn't even bring themselves to defend me. Says it all.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Channel 4 News' coverage this evening will reflect all of that. Accurately and fully of this, I have absolutely no doubt at all. And anyway, it's the Ruth Davidsons in charge now, be in no doubt about that. Noah from The Sun.
Thank you, Noah from The Sun. There's been a lot of talk today about how Britain is broken, but I was wondering, Nigel, what makes you optimistic about the future and if you have any positive hopes in terms of politics going forward. And Suella, I was wondering if you could expand a bit on the connection that you were drawing between the hate marches. And it is interesting that you actually coined that term, and in the beginning it received so much backlash, but now it is pretty much being adopted by a lot of people. What is your link between the failure of the Conservatives to crack down on the hate marches as they were going on, and then what happened in Manchester, because you seem to imply some sort of connection? Thank you.
If you saw our veterans event this morning, what did you see? Wild enthusiasm, optimism. You go to the UKIP conference, which we had in Birmingham in September. It was more like a festival than a party conference. Reform, sorry. I've led so many parties, it's difficult to keep up. You see an optimism. There's no question, there's no doubt about it. And why? Because they believe we can turn it around. And actually, if you look, you see, for example, what Rudy Giuliani did in New York. He turned one of the most dangerous cities in America to one of the safest cities in America. We've seen economic turnarounds before. We believe that with the right mentality, with the right level of determination, and with the courage to fight those that will oppose change, that it can be done. And our voters and our supporters do as well. And if this was a negative political movement, I would not be here. I've got stacks of other things that I can go and do in my life. I'm doing this because I believe we can and will turn it around.
On the hate marches, they are a damning indictment of failing policing in this country. and they should have been banned when I urged them to be banned around Armistice Day. The fact that a march went ahead on Armistice Day, desecrating the memory of our war dead, is a national disgrace. And in the lead up to that, I was pleading with the Prime Minister, basically. I had lost confidence in the Met Commissioner on his strategy and tactics for policing those marches. They had got out of control. Every week there was another apology from the Met Police. They were chanting jihad on the streets of Britain. Jewish people had to stay locked up for fear of attack and physical assault. It was a disgrace. And what we've had is, over the 2 years, a normalisation of this extremism on our streets, a normalisation of anti-Semitism, and a flagrant display of two-tier policing, whereby the police turn a blind eye to the pro-Palestinian hate marches and let them scale war memorials, fire off flares, cover their face, chant anti-Semitic chants, and yet a very heavy-handed response to other kinds of protests which tend to connect to the right of British politics. Two-tier policing writ large, a total disgrace and contributory to the undermining of public confidence. And I warned that someone would be killed in 2023. And it is a great shame that 2 years later, members of the Jewish community were murdered on the streets of Britain.
Adam from Guido Fawkes.
Thank you. Adam Cherry, Guido Fawkes. You mentioned Andy Burnham earlier. So, simple question. If Labour does change leader at some point, would they lose their democratic mandate, and should they then call an immediate general election?
I think that was a very likely proposition, and I suspect that's the crisis that will engulf British politics at some point this summer. I think the May the 7th results are going to be so catastrophic for Labour, particularly in places like Wales. You know, Keir Hardie, Merthyr Tydfil, Nye Bevan, Michael Foot, Neil Kinnock, constituencies they've held ever since 1918, councils they've run, let alone devolved power for 26 years, giving us the worst NHS, the worst education in the whole of the UK. Now, opinion polls vary, campaigns change. But if the last measures and markers showing Labour at 10% in Wales, virtually disappearing in really what we could call their historic political homeland, then I do think Starmer is going to face a crisis, and I do think the country will scream out for an election. I mean, we could argue that all the while they've got a majority, they can soldier on. But, the other factor in this, and I've said this before, the other factor in this is the state of the economy, and it's much, much worse than anyone believes. You go out to provincial Britain, you go out to small-town Britain. I was in Llandudno a few days ago. I really got the feeling it was on the edge of a cliff, that the local economy was literally on the edge of a cliff. And so even if Andy Burnham thinks we can ignore the bond markets, sorry, matey, but in reality you can't. So, yeah, there is a big crisis coming for this Labour government before too long. Pieter from the Daily Telegraph.
Thank you. Peter here from the Daily Telegraph. The 2024 election showed us quite clearly the country's had enough of the Tories and wanted them out. Now, you might say that those that are defecting are the best of the party, they're the true patriots. But how do you convince those reform voters who despise the Tories that those politicians wearing a different rosette now represent change? And if I can just throw out a second question, there have been 22, 23 defections. Would you be able to humour us by giving us an indication of how many Tories have approached you to join? Is it 30, 40, sort of more than 50? Just to get a sense of what you're saying no to.
You'd be surprised how remarkably, wonderfully forgiving human beings are, provided people stand up and repent. And we've seen acts of repentance from a number of former Conservative MPs. But also, you've got political consistency here. Most of our reform supporters and voters would have agreed with the Spartans and what they did, and there are two of them sitting in this room. And without the Spartans, the Brexit Party couldn't have won the European elections of that year and couldn't have got rid of Theresa May. So you could actually argue that in some ways we've been working in concert, albeit in different parties, but now the time has come to unite, not around campaigns, but around a political party and movement that intends to go ahead and not win individual issues, but win the next general election. And I think you'll find our voters and our supporters.
So that's a news conference with Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman, who has defected from the Conservative Party.
And wants to join, and I accept him, we might have a problem. But don't worry, folks, don't panic, Lee. It's going to be okay. None of that's going to happen. So there is an intellectual consistency in political messaging from these people. And, you know, Jenrick might have been on the other side 10 years ago, but pretty clearly everything he's done for the last few years is aligned absolutely with what we stand for and what we do. So there is a political consistency in this. I'm not going to speculate on numbers, but I mean, the truth is, of this current parliamentary Conservative Party, there's only a relatively small percentage that we would even consider accepting. And it's just as simple as that. Let's go to Christian from the Express.
So a number of Liz Truss's cabinet are among the defectors that you've received. I believe earlier today you said that Ms Truss herself joining was merely unlikely. Do you not think it would be helpful for Reform UK to rule out her joining, given the anger amongst the general public about the impact of her mini-budget? You've now also got a hell of a lot of big personalities within the party. Is there a risk that you're going to go from a one-man band to Fleetwood Mac? And can you clarify when you'll be announcing your shadow cabinet?
I can't win, can I? I can't win. Either you're a one-man band or you're an uncontrollable rabble. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Look, I said it was very unlikely that Liz Truss would apply to join the party. Right? Boom. Said. Done. There's one thing we can be grateful for from that budget. We learned a very valuable, fundamental lesson. That you cannot be a tax-cutting party in a period of continual deficit without cutting government spending. That's the big takeaway. That's the big lesson. That's the bit that Kwasi Kwarteng, bright though he is in many other ways, that's the bit they got horribly wrong, and the markets wouldn't wear it, and many of their own supporters wouldn't wear it. And that is why, contrary to the absolute baloney that you'll hear from Kemi Badnoch or Priti Patel, far from us being a welfarist party, we've already proposed some of the, in fact, the biggest cuts to welfare expenditure ever seen in British political history. And we will need to cut welfare spending considerably. One, so that we are free to start controlling the deficit and to bring down taxes and to incentivise people. And secondly, because there is absolutely no question that our spending on defence, albeit spent in the right way, has now become absolutely imperative. And we need some very, very fresh thinking. I'm told the MOD are slowly waking up to the importance of drones and modern battlefield technology, but we just got to face it unavoidably. We will need to be spending more on defence. So I think the balance of that is right, and I think the Kwarteng budget has actually done us a very, very big favour to tell us that at some point you have to start cutting government spending. Right, let's keep going. We're only halfway through, good Lord. Daisy from the Times, you're enjoying yourself far too much. Daisy from the Times.
Thank you. For you, Nigel Farage, with Burnham being blocked from standing in Gorton and Denton, it's looking like it could be a two-horse race between the Greens and Reform UK. As that vote comes up in a month, we heard earlier, could you spell out what your lines of attack will be? And for Suella Braverman, do you have hopes to serve in a Reform UK cabinet, potentially under a role like Home Secretary? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's the 26th of February. They've called an absolute snap election, and that's so they can get the postal votes out, they hope, more quickly than any other party can mobilise. That's what it's all about. Had Burnham stood, our chances of winning would have been considerably reduced, because he would have been the anti-Starmer candidate. I believe that Reform, are now the anti-Starmer candidate. Only a Reform victory can get rid of Starmer as Prime Minister. He is the most unpopular Prime Minister in living memory. I think the last approval poll I saw had his approval rating only on 11%. And I think this could well become a referendum about Keir Starmer and his future. I expect to see a strong reluctance from Labour voters to turn out on the day. It'll depress the overall turnout in this by-election. I suspect there'll be votes that go to the left. Don't forget George Galloway's Workers' Party got 14% in that constituency in the last general election. Plus there's going to be an attempt by Greens, etc. And I think our prospects of winning that by-election are considerably better than they were 24, 36 hours ago. But like Runcorn, it ain't going to be easy. These have been Labour seats, culturally, historically, for a very, very long time. So it may well be close, but I think we're in with an extremely good chance. Anti-Starmer, referendum on the Prime Minister, that's one of the key campaign messages. We'll be launching the campaign in the constituency at 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Launching our candidate tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. in the constituency. Thank you. Jason from the Mail.
Hi, thanks. Since we're talking about Burnham, I mean, Labour started the day having a terrible time. You seem to have taken the spotlight off them today with this sort of attack. Why are you doing Labour a favour? And Suella, can I ask you, you said, Nigel's views are shared by thousands of your constituents. Are you going to have a by-election there? I just find it to come back to this sort of Conservative attack. They seem to be suggesting you've got to be mad to join Reform. Are they right?
Well, I have to say, the lower they sink with their criticisms, the more it tells us about them. And I thought Priti Patel yesterday was, frankly, pretty appalling stuff. Pretty appalling stuff. And then the personal attacks on Suella today. I mean, frankly, I think we've dealt with those as effectively as we're going to this afternoon. We're not going to labour the point. Suella said it says more about them than it does about us. We will not sink into the gutter in these debates. I put it as simply as that. We are not doing Labour a favour. We're building an election-winning machine by uniting the centre-right of British politics around Reform. That is what's happening. And I know that at the moment, your newspaper's current editorial line seems to think that there should be a merger, that Suella and Ruth Davidson should all get together. And I just don't see it happening. I don't see why it would happen. And also, why would we trust the party not to break its promises and, frankly, let us down again? Anything to add?
Listen, I believe in by-elections, definitely. And if I were leaving the Labour Party to go to the Conservatives or government to go to opposition, I think there's a very strong case there for a by-election. But as you heard, I spent the last general election apologising for being a Conservative. And I believe that I won that seat despite the Conservative rosette, not because of it. A lot of polling said that I was going to lose that seat. I put out leaflets saying that we needed to leave the ECHR, which was not my party policy at the time. And the reality is that now that I'm a Reform UK MP, the people of Fareham Waterlooville will have a more authentic Member of Parliament who can speak in alignment with her party much more freely and much more authentically.
Thank you. Samara from Talk.
Thank you, Samara from Talk. Given the concerns raised about sites like military barracks in Crowborough, where illegal migrants were basically smuggled in the middle of the night last week, I was down there and the people are just basically enraged and frightened. Would a Reform government ensure that people in the UK that are here illegally are not free to move around unchecked? And given you won't be able to shut down sites like Crowborough on day one, how would you enforce that?
The residents of Crowborough would be far less concerned if those young men who illegally come to Britain, willfully discarding their iPhones and their passports in the Channel at the 12-mile line, about whom we know absolutely nothing, they'd be far less concerned, the residents of Crowborough, if they were kept behind locked gates. They'd rather they weren't there at all, but the real concern is that these people will be moving freely out within the community. And I'm sorry if people don't like it, but if you allow large numbers of young men to come into Britain from countries with cultures that treat women not even as second-class citizens, don't be surprised when you get incidents such as that caused the uproar in Epping last year. These are major, fundamental, cultural differences. And you know what? Joe Public has absolutely had enough of it. Promise after promise. Stop the boats. We're going to deal with this. We're going to deport people. And I think the real answer lies with the ECHR. But I think the lady sitting to my right knows rather more about this than I do.
Nigel said it all. There's nothing more I can add. Listen, the fundamental crux of the problem is we need to regain control over a lot of our detention powers, our deportation powers, and how we empower the state to deliver the swift removal of illegal migrants. That's the cause of this problem we're seeing. And leaving the ECHR is the first necessary step. And I set out the plan, the legal and policy strategy on how to do that earlier last year. And I was very pleased and grateful that Richard Tice supported and endorsed the plan. It's ready to go.
Agnes from LBC, we're rattling through now.
Aggie Chambray, LBC. Suella Braverman, you said that it was the first time in years that you can finally believe in something. Do you remember when you stopped believing in the Tories? For example, did you believe in the Tory government when you were Home Secretary? And if I may, when you walked into Reform UK HQ this afternoon and saw Lee Anderson and Robert Jenrick and Andrew Rosendale and Danny Kruger, did you have a moment where you panicked and thought you hadn't joined a new party after all?
When did I stop believing in the Conservative Party? Listen, I think, I first felt very concerned about things the day I walked into the first cabinet meeting with Rishi Sunak. And I looked around that cabinet room, and I tell you, the first thought that entered my mind was, I don't fit. Rishi Sunak, Jeremy Hunt, Mel Stride, so many people really on the left of the party dominating that cabinet. And I had a sense of foreboding then, but I tried my best internally, and we saw what happened. I ended up falling out with the Prime Minister. We disagreed on so many things. He sacked me in the end. It's actually remarkable that I lasted that long in that cabinet. I think that was the question, wasn't it? Was there another question? Oh, yeah. Listen, all of the colleagues that I've met today, I am grateful that I can call them friends. And for the first time in years, I feel that I'm part of a great political mission that I can really have confidence and faith and I'm inspired by. And that is something you can't buy.
A movement based on realism with lots and lots of optimism. That is what we are. Will from Bloomberg.
Thank you. Will Standring, Bloomberg. Suella, as a former Home Secretary and Nigel as the man who hopes to deport hundreds of thousands of people from Britain, I'm wondering what your reflections are on the actions of ICE in the US recently. Is this a model for your own deportation push?
Well, they've gone too far, very clearly. And that is why the White House have taken action and sacked Noam today. They've gone too far. I mean, look, if you're confronting a protester that is openly carrying a gun, you've got an issue. But once he's been removed of that gun, then that clearly shouldn't have happened. I mean, look, truth is, there are many, many deaths in America every year caused by the police. There is a different attitude in a country where guns are more freely available. But yes, I think ICE has gone beyond its limits right at the moment. Has it done a good job is another question. And what's really interesting about the numbers that have gone from America is most have gone voluntarily. The ICE agent knocks on the door and says, listen, mate, we know you're here illegally. Please do this the nice way. Go. We'll give you $1,000 spending money when you get there. We'll pay your fare. And by the way, if you want to reapply to come to America under a skills visa, we will not discriminate against you. And that is why over 80% of deportations have genuinely been voluntary. But when it comes to those When it comes to those that refuse to leave, they clearly take tougher action. The deaths that have occurred have both actually been not with illegal immigrants, they've been with protesters. So, big rethink needed in how ICE operates, something the White House has acted, I think, really pretty quickly on. Okay, Emilio from Politico.
Hi, thank you very much. Nigel, you said yourself that some of the people that you're welcoming here failed in government. Why do you want so many people who have proved that they can't do the things that you want to do in government around you? Why recruit all these failures if they're failures? And Suella Braverman, you said Nigel doesn't waver and he's consistent. I mean, it's easy to be consistent if you're not in power. And obviously you know that. You've been in government and you've had to compromise. So should you not think slightly differently about him?
Nobody in life that's been successful, nobody that's been really genuinely successful has not had a series of failures along the way. And, you know, it's really funny in America, the culture in America, you meet rich, successful people, they boast about their failures. In Britain, you lot write it up as if somehow people have committed a terrible criminal offence because they've had a business that failed. I'm going to say this on Suella's behalf. Her failure wasn't to deliver the policy objective she had, and the same applies for others. The failure was to persuade her own government, her own party, to do the things that were necessary to achieve that success. And this is why ECHR membership is absolutely central to everything we intend to do if we win the next general election. If we don't remove ourselves from ECHR, frankly, when it comes to criminality, when it comes to deportations, when it comes to all these issues, frankly, we will fail unless we leave the ECHR. And I think, you know, for me, excuse me, from the outside, you know, it's the Conservative Party saying it will do Rwanda, saying it will do this and do that, whilst at the same time being in the ECHR, facing both ways at the same time, thinking that appeals to a broader electorate. And our feeling is, you know, when the recent opinion polls show that 74% of Britons in polls think Britain is broken, they're ready for radical action and different thinking.
On consistency, what I find very impressive about Reform UK, and in particular Nigel, is the way in which they have taken what started off as a protest party and made it the leading political party in British politics right now. That has required consistency of message, focused delivery, and very strict adherence to a plan. You don't do that by being inconsistent. You don't do that by being all over the place. And I think that is not something that anybody can really lay claim to. It's something that Reform, led by Nigel, have achieved in a very short amount of time. They're on the way up, and they're only doing that because of very strong leadership down to consistency.
Helen from PA.
Thanks. Hello, Helen from the Press Association. Suella, you gave us a list of broken promises from the Tories and spoken about the failure of the party, but do you feel that you personally failed, or is there nothing in your eyes that you could have done differently in that role? And then I understand your husband joined Reform and then left last year. Has he rejoined with you this time?
So, listen, I've reflected a lot on being part of the last failed Conservative administration. And as I said, that is why I was the first Conservative MP re-elected to publicly apologise to the nation, taking responsibility. I feel I exhausted every avenue. I tried in the room, I tried politely, I tried quietly, I tried diplomatically, I tried gently. I was ignored, I was blocked. Then I tried a bit more forcefully, I tried loudly, I tried a bit more stridently, and then I was sacked and punished. I'm not quite sure what else I could have done. What I've learned is it's not me, it's the Conservative Party. It's the Conservative Party that can't change. Yes, and listen, my husband has rejoined. He's been supporting for many months now. And it's very nice that we're now both members of the same political party. I think that makes Sunday lunch a bit more amicable.
Very, very good. I was asked earlier this morning, how long had I been negotiating with Suella? I reckon about 10 years, don't you? Because we've always believed in the same things. All right, only three to go. David from the FT.
Hello, David Shepherd from the Financial Times. One for Suella. Nigel's spoken about where ICE went wrong in the United States, saying they went too far. But should people who think, OK, we may be seeing a reformed government in a few years' time, should they expect to see agents similar to ICE on the streets of the UK? And quick one for Nigel as well. On the, you said you want to bring in outside expertise into Cabinet. You've got an increasing number of big beasts coming across into the party. Will there be room to accommodate both outside expertise and the people you're bringing in?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the trouble is we could be absolutely ram full, couldn't we, of talent in all directions. No, look, there are so many areas of our life where there are people out there who've been successful, who have knowledge, and who I think will be attracted to a mission that says we've got to turn this country around. I genuinely believe they're out there. We've never done it properly. There was one moment I thought, wow, Gordon Brown's got something right. Not gold, by the way. But, when he appointed Digby Jones, former head of the CBI, successful West Midlands businessman, and he appointed Digby Jones to be a business minister. He was bringing somebody in from outside who'd never been in politics. And I thought, that's really interesting. And I wonder whether British politics would change. I wonder whether we start seeing ministers, with real expertise in areas. Since then, sadly, very, very few genuine experts have been brought in. And I very much doubt the elected wing of the party to make a successful government.
Listen, I think when it comes to our border security, there is a very strong case to increase the powers of any immigration enforcement officers that we deploy. At the moment, they're hamstrung. They're hamstrung by human rights laws, they're hamstrung by health and safety laws, they're hamstrung by all sorts of needless and obstructive bureaucracy. That's one of the problems as to why we can't deport people. We can't detain them and we can't deport them. And that legal change and that operational change needs to happen.
But it'll be done in a British way.
Yeah.
OK, 2 to go. Priya from The Guardian.
Hi, Priya Baradia from The Guardian. For Nigel Farage, so you mentioned today your views on ICE going too far, and you've said in the past that the party wants to take a Trump-style approach to immigration. Do you still see Trump? Do you still see Trump?
Have I?
Richard Tice has.
Has he? OK.
Do you still see Trump as a force for good in the world? And for Suella Braverman, I wanted to ask, when was the last time you were able to speak to Kemi Badenoch, and what was that conversation about? Did you feel you could share some of the concerns you had about the party with her?
Illegal immigration in America has been cut by 97% since Trump came to power. We may disagree with his style. We may disagree with some of what he says. But illegal immigration in America has been cut by 97%. Can you imagine how much confidence would be restored in British politics and politicians if we were able to do anything even approaching that?
If only. The last time I spoke to Kemi was when she asked me to vote for her in the leadership contest. She started by apologising to me for saying that I was having a nervous breakdown when, after the general election, I diagnosed the problems with the Conservative Party, saying that we had spoken about being robust and conservative, but governed in a wholly weak and ineffective way. And she had said something disparaging about me. She apologised, and then she asked me to vote for her in the leadership contest.
Right, the last question. The last question of the day goes to Jane from the iPaper.
Thank you. First of all, to Suella, do you think, given her response to your defection today and given the hostile briefings, the Conservatives' response today, do you think the Conservatives are turning back into the nasty party? And to Nigel, do you think this kind of behaviour is going to drive more defections into your arms?
I think it is a very toxic and unhealthy party, and I'm afraid that is the consequence of a failing group of people. They're all about losing their seat, about what is happening to the party. There is a very low morale within the Conservative Party. We are losing members. We are losing elections. We are it's the they. It's going to take some time for me to break that habit.
I made the same mistake earlier.
They are losing elections. They are trailing in the polls. They're dying on their feet, and this is just, it's very sad to watch. This was a great party once upon a time. This is the party of Thatcher and the party of Churchill. Look what it's become.
They will get nastier still. They will get nastier still. You see, they know what you probably don't yet know, because they haven't shared it with you. They know what their polling is telling them for May the 7th. They know the cataclysm that they're on the edge of on May the 7th, when they cease to be a national party. And therefore, they will do literally anything they can between now and then to discredit us and to discredit me. And if they've used one or two nasty words about Suella today, that's absolutely nothing compared to what I'm about to get in the course of the next 2 months. But you know something? It'll make absolutely no difference with the electorate whatsoever. They're absolutely sick of the bitterness and infighting, the psychodrama that the Conservative Party put the whole country through for several years leading up to the last election, and which I sense the Labour Party itself is about to be engulfed by. And so, for us going forward, the biggest and most important thing for us to do, particularly with an extended team and some big characters and some big figures, the single most important thing for us to do is, when we have disagreements, we have them behind closed doors. We settle our arguments in private with respect for each other. And if we were to slip into those same mistakes as the other parties, of publicly fighting each other, they view us with similar contempt, which is why we're not going to do it. Thank you, everybody. Next time, bring your popcorn. Thank you. It's a long old press conference, wasn't it?